Good evening, everybody. It's a very special Monday edition of Observations on Roads to Liberty, part of the Think Liberty Network. And we are coming to you today because scheduling, always scheduling. Today's special guest is going to be the Libertarian presidential candidate herself, Dr. Jo Jorgensen. Go ahead and bring her up. How you doing, Dr. Jo?
Hey, glad to be here. Thanks so much.
Thank you for taking time out to join us today. So I wanted to set this up a couple of weeks ago. Some things happened with scheduling. It didn't work out the way that we wanted to. So things are going to this format. Ben, can you hear me?
Yeah, you glitched out. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Now I can.
Okay, so I wanted to do this a couple weeks ago, and things kind of fell through. So what I got tonight is some of the head admins for some of the most influential pages in the so-called Boogaloo movement. And for people out there who have been living under a rock, these people have had the full court press pushed against them in the mainstream media. They've been maligned as everything from accelerationists, extremists, white supremacists, and all of it is utter crap. So after your candidacy was secured in the primary, you or your campaign or both of you posted some things that really perked up the old ears of a lot of these guys, things about the ATF, the NFA, Second Amendment in particular, and that's a lot of where we kind of coalesce around. So in order to clarify some positions for their followers, I put together this little interview format here, and if you would be so kind to answer some of their questions, let's bring up our first one. It's Cameron Purser of Flytrap Firearms Consulting. Cameron, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic.
Good. Well, thank you for having me, Dr. Jorgensen. Thank you for taking this time to be with us today. I'm so excited. I am not nearly as influential as some of the other guys that will be speaking with you today, but I'm very, very happy to be here. My first question for you, because we're limited on time, my first one is, how do we bring America collectively back to appreciating liberty? How do we get people to embrace individual liberties and wanting to protect those? Because I feel like we have strayed so far from that over a long course of time throughout American history since the Civil War. What do we do to bring people back to that, appreciate it, and protect it?
Well, I'm not sure that they really appreciate the abstract idea of liberty. I think what needs to be explained is what liberty means to them in practical terms. And my favorite example is through education. Right now, we have a federal government, one size fits all. You have to have this kind of education, whether you're in rural Appalachia or downtown New York City. And I would like to explain to people, look, right now it's a war. If you want prayer in the school, and your neighbor doesn't, now you're at war with each other and you have to go and you have to vote on what you want. How about let's return the power to each of us, and instead of sending our money to Washington and having them come up with one size fits all, how about we get to keep our money, have our freedoms to choose, and that way, if you want prayer in your school, send your kids to the school of prayer. If your neighbor doesn't, they can send their kids to a different school. But right now, everything is going through the government, and that's why we're so divided.
Yes,
because it doesn't matter whether it's your retirement, whether it's healthcare, whether it's education, anything, you have to vote on it. You don't get to just choose the kind of healthcare you want. You have to go through the kind that the government gives you. You can't just choose the kind of school you want. You have to go through the government. And why is the federal government involved in local issues like education anyway? So if we can explain to people, hey, guess what? You can miss a voting day, you can miss an election day, and it won't matter because you get to make your own decisions.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Thank you. All right. My second question, this one actually comes from my wife. She's from Norfolk. I live here in Southeast North Carolina near Camp Lejeune. We have a lot of military friends. And so one of the things you've said is bring military home. And a lot of us absolutely agree with that. But she brought up a good question is, what do we do with these guys that come home? Because obviously be a massive influx of people coming back. And do we, bring them in and let the people that are currently in stay through the rest of their term and then not just fill those positions that are overseas? Or, how do we accommodate those guys coming home and make sure they integrate back into society where we just don't forget about them?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, keep in mind that the money to pay their salary comes from somewhere. And so what I've been telling people is, for instance, instead of your taxes going to pay for a new bomber jet, new fighter jet, instead you get to keep the money, and instead you can choose a vacation on a commercial airline. So when we bring the people home, basically, well, of course, we can't bring everybody home on day one. And I'm sure there would be many people who, would have places that they would want to go to. But of course, we wouldn't just drop everybody like that. And that's really been my platform all along. And I believe that that's one of the reasons that I got the nomination was for Social Security, because some other people were saying, let's just cut Social Security on day one. And I said, no, people have paid into it for decades. So we've got to honor that.
Yes, ma'am. All right. My third question is, this is just for me. I am a firearms instructor here, just a local guy, and I do it as a side gig. It's a passion of mine. And one of the biggest criticisms you hear from people that want more restrictions on people's Second Amendment rights is requiring them to get some kind of certification, some kind of training before they can even own a firearm, which is an obvious infringement. But how do you feel about potentially coming up with some program or helping states come up with their own programs that makes affordable firearms training more accessible to people of all economic status, even down to finding a way to put shooting education back into the schools? That's something I think that a lot of people would agree is a fair compromise if we can do it responsibly.
Well, I would point out that the criminals certainly don't have to go through a background check and training. So why should law-abiding citizens have to? I would get rid of every gun law passed in the last 100 years and not even go down the path towards red flag laws, where basically people have their rights taken away from them without even a trial, without being charged. It's absurd. So there have been documented deaths in which somebody had a waiting period and was killed in the meantime, couldn't defend themselves. So we need to stop this insanity and let law-abiding citizens buy guns. So training is great, but again, I would let people who want to go to training, let them go to training, but certainly the criminals aren't doing that.
No, ma'am. No, they're not. All right. My next question is, how do you get into the national televised debates? I know 15% of polling is required. What is your plan? How do you want to do it? Because I know the energy behind you right now is just rapidly growing, and we're all excited about it. What's your plan for the debates?
Oh, yeah, just to keep doing the same old stuff. I mean, we are so energized. Usually when you throw your hat into the ring, you get your core supporters, and then they kind of get the word out, and then other people join the campaign. I mean, we had non-libertarians joining from the first day. I was told a week into it, just going through the numbers, it looks like we've got more non-libertarians than libertarians joining. So it's just been so exciting. And I think this might be a good year because we keep hearing the media say, hey, we got two old rich white guys, let's look for an alternative. Now, I want people to choose me because of my policies, not because I'm not a rich old white guy. But you know what? I'll take a vote for whatever reason somebody wants to give me a vote. If it'll bring about real change for us, then I'll be happy to take anybody's vote.
Absolutely. Next one is, why do you think victims of gun violence should be able to sue gun manufacturers? It's on your website. Is that just simply, if you want to sue, you can sue, that's your right to, or do you believe that gun manufacturers should be sued in the event that someone's killed with their product? That was something that I've seen a lot of people talk about in your Facebook group about your campaign. A lot of people have concerns about that, and you see people split 50-50 on what your meaning behind it is.
Yeah, no, like they say, you can sue a ham sandwich, right? So we're not going to take those rights away. But no, I think it's absurd to, let's say sue the liquor company because they sold liquor to the bar because then the bartender sold it to somebody else who now drove drunk. I mean, that's absolutely absurd. So no, we don't want to take rights away. And libertarians, we think that the court system is a good way to become whole. Rather than having laws for everything, to go to the court if there's a problem. So we're not going to put a any kind of limits on.
Yeah, I think clarification was needed with a lot of people I saw talking about it. So thank you.
Well,
and then,
thank you. I will mention that to them. Thanks for that.
Yeah, no problem. And then the last one is, one of the biggest issues with your campaign that I've seen people not even hearing about you? I mean, right now it's grassroots from the internet. I've seen a lot of people joking, we're going to meme Dr. Jorgensen into the White House, and it's working, to be honest. But how do we get you into the mainstream? How do we get people that you just have never even heard of who you are? Because I know today I've been tagged in 3 different posts that said, has anybody heard of this lady running for presidential candidate? And it's like, okay, yeah, let me talk to you. So how do we get you to be more of a household name?
Yeah, exactly what you're talking about. Friends telling friends, coworkers, relatives, and having those people tell their friends, coworkers, and relatives. And I got to tell you, we're getting somewhere. Now, granted, I live in a rather small town, but when I went to the Greenville airport last week to fly to Minneapolis, and I gave my ticket and my ID to the TSA agent, he looked at my name and says, Jorgensen, are you the Jo Jorgensen running for office? And that was so exciting. He wasn't even a libertarian, just somebody local. And I had somebody who recognized me on the street too. So if we can just keep doing what we're doing, and
Yes,
I'm so thankful we have social media. When I was the VP candidate in '96, we didn't have social media to go around the mainstream media, and now we do, and I think it's working. And
excellent.
I think we are making headway.
Fantastic. Well, I know we have limited amount of time, so I guys want to ask you some important questions, so I'm going to concede here. Thank you so much. If you ever find yourself in the Wilmington, North Carolina area, I'd love to come out and see you.
Okay, definitely. Thanks so much.
Have a great
Thank
day.
you, Cameron. Very good questions. And yes, just like Cameron said, Donald Trump had the meme game going strong in 2016, and they were kind of nasty. They were kind of mean. Yours so far have been very wholesome and very contentful. And I don't know who you got over on your team, or if it's all just grassroots public submissions of people just like throwing it out there, but I've seen some really good ones.
Yeah, I've got a great person in charge of social media. She's doing an awesome job.
Fantastic. So we're going to bring up our next guest here. This is Rick from North Carolina. Rick, how you doing? Welcome back.
Doing all right. It's good to be here.
Hey.
Hello, Dr.
Fantastic.
Jorgensen.
So we'll
good to see you.
Okay, so we'll just let you jump right into it, Rick. Go ahead.
Okay. First off, it's an honor and a privilege to be able to interview you. I've never interviewed a presidential candidate before, so this is a first. Go ahead and knock that off my bucket list. Dr. Jorgensen, I asked my followers on North Carolina to give me questions. I had about 70 to 80 replies, and I picked 4 questions that I thought would be pretty relevant coming up and I think are very important. But I think for time's sake, I'm going to ask you the most important 2. The first one being, if you were to be elected, would you continue with the current personal and corporate tax laws, do a feasibility study and make changes, or would you do a complete overhaul from top to bottom?
I would get rid of the personal income tax in 1 year. There's no reason why we need to have that. In fact, a lot of people say, well, without the income tax, we're not going to have a country. But they don't realize that the income tax only brings in about half of our revenues. And we need to get rid of half of our spending as it is. So let's get rid of the personal income tax. And of course, we need to get rid of the corporate income tax as well, because that's one of the reasons that companies are sending jobs overseas. So we need to bring those jobs home.
Okay. And do you have any other little intricacies about maybe corporate tax laws or anything personally that you feel needs to be changed? Any other little details for the followers?
Well, I think the system is wrong in which the corporations basically get power through big government. A lot of people on the left say, these greedy corporations, they've got way too much power. We need government to make their power, take away some of their power. But they don't realize that they're getting their power through government, through lobbying, through special interests. Sometimes Congress will write a law for just one corporation. Now, they won't say that one corporation, but they'll say, all corporations existing in the state of Ohio who do such and such and such. And it ends up being one corporation. So that's absurd.
Okay. Let me go ahead and skip on down to what I feel personally is one of the more important questions today. It doesn't get asked. It gets mentioned vaguely by the media anytime tragedy strikes. And I do think that working in this industry is suffering dearly. I'd like to know your input on it. And the question is, will you reform the mental health care system in America, and how?
Well, once again, anytime you get government involved, services go down, quality goes down. There's no reason to compete. So mental health is actually part of the larger healthcare system. And what we have right now is a system that's been destroyed because the government has gotten involved. I'd like to point out that the two most free market specialties in medicine are LASIK and cosmetic surgery. And with those specialties, prices have gone down dramatically and quality's gone up dramatically because doctors are competing to try to give a better product. Just like, when you go to buy a new car or a new computer, they've got to work to earn your business. And right now with mental health, we've got, going through the government, which creates obstacles. We've got licensing laws problems. There are just all sorts of problems that if we just get government out of the way, it would work so much better.
Okay, and I know because of some of the recent healthcare law changes.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt too?
Yeah,
just to let you know, by the way, my PhD is actually in industrial organizational psychology, so not mental health. However, I recently earned a master's of social work, and I have a graduate certificate in drug and alcohol studies. So I actually teach abnormal psychology at Clemson University. So I am aware of the mental health, industry. I hate to call it an industry, but that's the way the government runs. But I'd like to point out that part of the problem was started back in the era of Kennedy, when they decided, let's deinstitutionalize everybody. Instead of housing people in large hospitals, let's have the community support them, which sounds great, except what they did was they put everybody out on the street before they had the community ready, the community health centers ready to take over. So basically all these people were out on their own. So once again, government, they're putting the, cart before the horse. Anytime they do something, they just do it wrong.
Yeah, and I do see that frequently. We have many, and I hate to use this rough terminology, but we have a lot of group home dumps come into our emergency department who just keep going back through the same broken cycle of care, and there's no long-term facilities that you don't wait 1 to 2 weeks to get into for a 1 to 2 week treatment, and they're still, back out on the street, changing group homes, and it's an endless cycle that I think is hurting a lot of citizens in this country.
Yeah, and I didn't hear all of what you said because it kind of cut out, but I do want to mention that once again, we've got government. One of the barriers is what's called the certificate of need law. So you can't just say, hey, I'm going to set up a mental health care facility. I'm going to set up a clinic. You can't do that. You have to go to the government and they have to decide if it's needed or not. How about let's let companies, individuals set up clinics, and if they're not needed, they'll go out of business. Why do we have to have everything okayed by the government?
Yeah. And if I have a quick moment, my followers are hounding me. If you were to be elected president, do you have a timeline on abolishing the ATF?
Gosh, just as soon as possible. I mean, it doesn't do a whole lot of good. There might be, in fact, I recently looked through the activities like a week ago, and there might be one small thing where it does with maybe helping national security, one small thing, tracking down bombs or something like that. Okay, fine. Let's put that in the military. Let's put it under military intelligence. Everything else, I don't see why we can't get rid of it just as soon as possible. Now, Congress is responsible for the budget and for funding it. However, my goal would be to point out to Congress who was elected president and what they need to do with their funding.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Jorgensen, for your time, and I wish you best of luck in 2020 elections.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Rick. Those were some very good questions from him as well. So lots of stuff to go over, and we are getting a ton of engagement. Some people were asking about any plans to get out of the United Nations, which I'm all for.
Oh, yeah.
I'd just like to see that burned down. Yeah, lots of other things. Some people are asking about just about everything under the sun, but we're limited on time, so I'm going to pull up our next guest here. Probably the most photographed guy in the entire movement, Mr. Squid from Patriot Wave.
Howdy, how are you?
How are you doing today, sir? We didn't get that.
You getting it? Hello?
All right, there we go. Go ahead.
There we go.
Take it
How
away.
you doing, Hobbs? Nice to meet you, Joe. I'm a huge fan. I'm in most of your meme groups. I've been pumping out my memes to try to get you elected as well. I do have a long list of questions. I'm going to cut it down to some of the best ones I got from my followers. So I think one of the biggest ones was, how are you going to deal with Second Amendment rights on a state basis, like in states like California, New York, where the laws are very strict?
Yeah, well, first of all, let's get rid of the federal laws. And once we get rid of the federal laws, then let's go to the states. And absolutely, that is a right, just as when George Wallace stood on the steps preventing blacks from entering the University of Alabama. If it got to where the states were basically taking away people's rights, then absolutely the federal government needs to step in.
All right. I've had quite a few people ask me about border policy as well. What is your policies looking like on immigration control and just the borders in general?
Yeah, 3 of my grandparents are immigrants, and people don't realize that, or a lot of people don't realize that we basically had open borders until the 1920s. And my grandparents came over shortly before then, and it helped make America vibrant. It increased our economy. It brought in new ideas. And so I think we need to go back to that and to open up our arms, open up our country and let hardworking Americans in. Now, there have been some stories about there. First of all, the media sometimes will pick one person who maybe had a DUI or another person, another immigrant who robbed somebody or whatever. But if you look at it, people born on American soil are more likely to commit crimes than people born on foreign soil. And also, overall, our GDP rises by allowing in immigrants. So I'm not saying this just to, because I want to be nice to immigrants. I'm saying this because I want our country to be vibrant and be competitive with the rest of the world.
All righty. I think another big question is, how would you define the victimless crimes? So, like, how would you basically define what a victimless crime would be?
Where there is no victim, where somebody's right to life, liberty, or property was not taken away. So common examples would be simple drug use, simple drug possession, sex work, where there's no coercion, gambling, simple gun possession, anything, you owning something or you having something in your house doesn't take away anybody's right to do anything, So me drinking a glass of bourbon at home doesn't take away anybody's right any more than somebody, having heroin at their home. And as far as sex work goes, what's the problem? We're talking about capitalism and sex. Which of those two are you against?
Yeah, that's fair. I feel pretty similarly on all that. I've had quite a few veterans that I know ask me about VA reform and just how veterans will be handled, like after we bring everyone home. Similar to this other question, but I'm thinking like more long term.
Oh yeah, how we treat our veterans is egregious. And what really frustrates me is I hear Bernie supporters and Liz Warren supporters saying how we need to have one giant Medicare. When I hear one giant Medicare, what I think is one giant VA hospital, and we know how poorly it's run. And if they can't even run healthcare for just our veterans, how are they going to run it for the rest of the country? So again, what we need to do is privatize. As I mentioned earlier, that the 2 specialties in which there's the most competition, they've got the lowest prices and the best customer service. We need that for our veterans as well, because they served our country and we definitely owe them.
Yeah, after experiencing Navy healthcare, I completely agree.
Yeah, by the way, my dad was in the Navy.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I've been in for quite some time now, and loved most of it. Healthcare wasn't part of the part that I loved, though. I'll tell you that much.
I believe it.
Okay, I got another question on personal property taxes. What are your views on personal property tax?
Well, again, what it does is it turns homeowners into renters. Now, let me mention, I'm running for president. That's out of my jurisdiction, so I wouldn't go in and tell communities how they need to run their cities. That's one of the problems we have right now, is the federal government getting everywhere in all these different areas where they don't belong. So I would hope that communities would lower their property taxes. And you know what? The good news is we are seeing cities and states with high property taxes, we're seeing them pay the price, because people, for instance, are moving out of California in droves to go to Texas, Idaho, and other states. And we hear of a lot of celebrities and other people moving out of New York City, moving to Florida. In fact, didn't Trump do that? Isn't he officially a resident of Florida because of that? So
Yeah.
There you have it.
Alrighty, and the last question I have on my list is, what are your views on the Boogaloo movement as a whole?
On what as a whole?
The Boogaloo movement.
Oh, I'm not. Please explain that to me again.
Okay, so your views on the Boogaloo movement as a whole, like the whole movement that we have going for basically liberty and justice for all.
Well, I am definitely for liberty and justice for all.
All right, that's fair. All right, well, that's all the questions I have. It's been great talking to you, ma'am. Really appreciated the opportunity. And I can't wait to vote for you in November.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, well, that was a pretty good raft of questions, and we've got so many questions coming over here in the sidebar that I can't even keep up. My computer is having trouble keeping up, too. So there was one somewhat sarcastic question from a friend of mine in one of our other chat groups. He wanted to know, is all taxation theft?
I'm going to leave that up to the individual. What I ran on is presenting an argument for the American people of why it's better to have smaller government. So I know that let me point out, when the Libertarian Party was first formed, they formed it more as an educational group. In fact, it was kind of an afterthought to run candidates. And they thought, well, what the heck, let's run some candidates. What we need to do is educate. But now the Libertarian Party no longer needs to do that. We've got Cato, we've got Reason, we've got all these other people out there, organizations out there, as well as podcasters spreading the message. So I'm going to leave the philosophical talk to others. I'm going to say that as a politician who's running to win, I'm going to talk in terms of what helps the American people and what they're looking for.
And I think that is probably the best approach to it. Ben, thank you.
How much time do you have, Joe? We have a bunch of people.
There's somebody else here. Yeah, I can stay another 10 minutes. That's fine.
Well, this is Ben. This is producer Ben. He's the guy that's been bringing guests in and out and doing all the stuff in the background. Have you been keeping track of any questions that were pertinent, Ben? Because I've been over here like I got.
Well, somebody had a follow-up to bringing the troops home. When the troops are brought home, will there be a cut in budget and military size? I think I know the answer to that.
Oh, there will be a cut in the budget, of course, but we're not going to just chop everybody off at the knees and say, sorry, you got to get out there. I mean, we've got unemployment benefits as it is now. So, of course, we're not going to just tell the troops when you come home, now you're on your own. Of course, again, of course, we would have some sort of, some way to ease into it. Now, that's actually an excellent question that nobody's asked me about before, so I need to come up with some specific numbers. But I can tell you it's not going to be, you get off the plane and go figure it out on your own. So definitely these people gave their time. They were willing to risk their lives. The country cannot simply just turn their backs on them. And I'd like to point out that right now, or just in general, I want to go after corporate welfare before I ever go after individual welfare and not helping the service people. So.
Another one's been popping up a lot is, what are your views on cryptocurrency and the regulations of it? I've seen that one several times. That might be on your website, but we've had some people popping in.
Yeah, well, first of all, I am following the Libertarian Party platform, plank by plank, and the Libertarian Party platform is clear that we should have free market currency, that what we have under a monopoly system is what we usually have under monopoly systems, which is something that is non-responsive and basically doesn't give you a choice. So by going to, and by the way, you said cryptocurrency, I'm suggesting gold, silver, or, back in the olden days, they used to talk about people bringing chickens to their doctors for payment. If you're a company and you want to accept chickens as a currency, that's fine with me. Whatever two people decide on a currency, the government doesn't have a right to get involved and tell them no.
Well, and I'm seeing a lot of Native American posters putting questions up, and I have a soft spot for Native peoples growing up in South Dakota and Nebraska, and they're really kind of forgotten in a lot of things.
Yeah.
And do you have any specific issues, or is your campaign looked into for Native Americans? And also, one of them even asked, are you going to honor the Treaty of Fort Laramie? And I'm not going to hold it against you if you don't know what that one is, but
it's interesting because my former campaign manager, who now has a different title, he was actually speaking with some Native Americans. He spoke with one when we were in Chicago in March, and they are near and dear to his heart as well. And so, unfortunately, right now I don't have an official platform on it. But what the American government did is just atrocious. And I hope it's okay if I quote a TV show here. But if anybody's ever watched the show Adam Ruins Everything, when he ruins the Wild Wild West, he says that a lot of people have the impression that it was the cowboys and Indians. Actually, it was the federal government and Indians. It wasn't the cowboys who was taking away their rights. It was the federal government.
Well, and anybody watching this, and I encourage you to go read about it, Joe, the Treaty of Fort Laramie will just make you sick. I mean, any libertarian that learns about that, it just turns their stomach.
Oh yeah, I grew up thinking that basically Native Americans were from the West. And then I found out, no, they were actually in the East and the government drove them out. And by the way, my grandmother is actually part, she's passed now, but my grandmother is actually part Native American. My only grandparent who was born in this country is part Native American, and she looked somewhat Native American too. She was, I won't get into any other politicians.
You don't want to have an Elizabeth Warren thing here?
But I didn't do that. I don't think I want to. But basically, you if you talk to her, you would say, Native American.
Yeah, one thing that I'm seeing pop up a lot here seems to be like just about every other comment over here is go on the Joe Rogan podcast. You go on the Joe Rogan podcast. I don't know where you stand on that one, Dr. Jorgensen, but I'm going to tell everybody as far as on our end, if we had that kind of pull, our audio and video quality would be a lot better than it is right here. So
and we had Justin show up. You have time for one more question? We'll see if Justin can pick his most important question.
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Let me drop out and I'll pop him up here.
All right, so this guy that's going to be popping up here, this is Justin from Thick Bugline. He's the guys that he represents people that made this nifty little big igloo flag that's sitting right behind me. So let's hope that he can pop in here for just a quick question.
There he is. I had to drop Squid. So
hey there, how you doing?
Apologies, Squid.
I like your background.
Thank you. Thank you much. Thank you.
By the way, yes, I am a gun owner. Nobody asked me.
Well, that's good. Now,
Well, take that as a given.
Yeah. So I've been at work and I was in a spot where I had no service, and 6 o'clock was not an option for me. I just rushed home and got logged in. So I haven't caught any of the podcasts. So I'm sorry if somebody's already asked this question. I know a lot of our guys were asking it, and it's short and sweet. We have heard that your vice presidential candidate, Spike, is supporting some of his local Antifa groups. Can you speak on that and maybe give us a little insight of what he means by supporting them?
In fact, if you don't mind, I'm going to make a note of this right now. I had not heard of that. Of course, I do not support Antifa. They are now, I would not classify them as a terrorist group, because then that takes away your rights. However, they are terrorists, they are crooks, they are criminals, they are trespassing, they're rioting, and the sad thing is protesting is such an American value, where you get to go out, and if you have any problems, if you don't think your voice is being heard, you get to go out and share your ideas. And what these people are doing is they are opportunists who are hijacking the protesters. They're making the protesters look bad, and they're making everybody else look bad. So, you know, I have no use for Antifa. And the other thing I'd like to point out, which I didn't actually think of this on my own, somebody pointed out, notice they want to come in and they want to help the downtrodden, right? And yet you never see them in a poor neighborhood. You never see them in a minority neighborhood. You see them vandalizing Starbucks. You see them at Berkeley. You see them, in the rich white neighborhoods. So no, I have no use for them.
All righty, I appreciate it. And yeah, I didn't mean to bring the doomer mentality, but the question would have probably come out different if we weren't pressed for time. But I'd been asked so many times by so many people about that, and I just wanted to give you a chance to.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked.
All right, great meeting you, and you have a good evening, and good luck with your run.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Justin. Yep. Okay, so that was most of our guests. The other guest that I wanted to get in here, he had something go wrong with his calendar. He thought it was a different day, unfortunately. He's running for governor of Montana under the Libertarian Party, Lyman Bishop. So maybe if you wanted to set up something, just a one-on-one with him, we could get something like that squared away at some other day. Let's see here. So there was a couple of questions. If you got time for just a couple more.
Sure.
Okay.
A couple more.
I know we're really pressing our luck here, but one guy over here is like.
But can I interrupt and let me say, these have been really good questions, because I don't have a definite budget for what to do when the troops come home, and I didn't have a good answer for Native Americans. So I think this is good for me to be on the show, so that I know what to research for my next show. So I'm not getting the same old Social Security, healthcare stuff. So
right. So these guys that I brought in here, these are some educated good old boys, as I like to think of them. And they know what they're interested in. They know what they're about, and they ask the hard questions from a different angle. And that's I'm really glad to see that them and their supporters all brought something good to the table. So one comment, it's not really a question. The guy keeps asking over and over and over again, how do we get you on the debate stage? How do we get you on the debate stage? Over and over and over. I see you, Joe Ben. Yeah. I see you over there. Yeah. So that's up to you guys out there. That's not up to her. That's up to you guys. There's a 15% threshold. So it's for anybody that wants to see Joe on the debate stage. You have to get the word out there. And
yes, and let me point out that Gary Johnson got up to 13.6%, really close. So just you tell your friends and neighbors and coworkers, and have them tell their friends, and maybe we can get a movement going here.
I would say be persistent right up to the point of being annoying, and then draw back a little bit.
Or just send them to my website, by the way, which is joj2020.com, and maybe they'll like what they read. So, because as I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, I'm not going out with the usual libertarian message with the libertarian message that I myself tried in the 1980s, which is it's my money, it's my body, I can do what I want. I'm going out as saying, look, liberty and freedom work. They work. And let me show you how. So I'm trying to give a good reason for people to vote for us rather than saying it's all about me and what I want.
Right, that's very good. And let's see here. So one of the guys that he forgot to ask about this wants to know what your opinion is on big tech stranglehold on the on free market speech. You know, it's like these people are just they're clogging the public square. Is there anything that the federal government can or should do about that?
Unfortunately, they are a private company. They are supposed to, or they are private companies. They are supposed to be the town square, and I think that they are being stupid for doing what they're doing. And I think that being stupid is only going to give reason for somebody else to come into the market and compete against them. And for anybody who says Facebook is too big, I'd like to remind you of IBM in the 1970s when they were humongous. And the Justice Department wanted to divide them into 7 equal-sized companies so that boroughs could compete with them. And probably most of your listeners are going, what's a boroughs? Well, that was what was pretty much considered the second largest computer company. And yet who was able to take down IBM but 2 guys out of their garage, you know, Apple Computer. So yes, the free market does work. And I have faith that the free market is going to work here. But no, government shouldn't fix one problem by creating another one. It shouldn't be against the law to be stupid.
Yeah, I agree. I am very, very conflicted about how big tech is. It's not really as easy as go out and build your own, but at the same time, infringing on private companies is probably going to create just as many, if not more, problems. All right, so I think, Ben, unless you've got something else that you want to ask.
We've had a couple people say, where can I see your next speaking appearance? It's not on your website or Facebook. So I don't know if that's true, but it sounds like people want to hear you talk again. They want to know where to tune in.
Yeah, please go to my website. I actually do have one more interview tonight. Can I give you a different podcast?
Drop it.
Can I give it? Okay.
Yeah.
Portia takes on the black belt. She is an African-American woman in Alabama, and I will be on her show at 9 o'clock tonight. I am traveling. I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee right now. I was just in Minnesota over the weekend. So I will encourage the team to try to keep, keep posting my appearances.
So Portia takes on the black belt?
Yes. Now, it might be pre-recorded, though, because a lot of these are pre-recorded.
Okay,
right.
Well, great.
Awesome. Well, I'll just let you sign off. There are a bunch of people are asking where they can get merchandise, but I'll let you have the final word on this, Dr. Jo.
Right there.
Yeah, we just had a meeting before I came on air about logos. And so originally, I believe it's going to be at lp.org, the Libertarian Party. And we may or may not be selling them through our campaign, but I will be in Oklahoma over the weekend, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they are going to have signs ready for that appearance. So we will have something by Saturday. But yes, go to lp.org and they should have something. Not yet, because we're just picking them out tonight. I'm giving final approval here in about half an hour.
Awesome.
You heard it here first. You heard it here first.
And I throw it out there, Joe. I worked on Gary's campaign in 2016, and yours has way more energy than his did. So I think it's a good sign.
Well, thank you. I do too, and I think I think a lot of it's a sign of the times, and I think the coronavirus and the way government handled it, I think it just got a lot of people energized, saying, you know what, I'm not taking this anymore.
All right, and with that, I think we're going to call it a day. We've already pushed well past the half an hour, but
thanks for that, Joe.
Yes, thank you very, very much. That was very generous of you. So thank you everybody for watching. This has been Observation Special Monday edition on Roads to Liberty podcast, part of the Think Liberty Network at think-liberty.com, and also anywhere that your preferred podcasting app may be. Thank you very much, and have a lovely day.